So thank you very much. It's really nice to be giving this seminar. I'm going to be talking to you, as James was saying, about a group of young people that is often very much overlooked. So hence the title of the talk, Hard to Reach and Hidden. And I'll tell you a little bit about different studies that we've done to try to improve the identification and sort of the support tools that are at the moment available to them. So I'll start a little bit talking about who are young dementia carers, and give you a little bit of an overview of how we define that term. And then we'll tell you a little bit about two different studies that we've done to look at their identification and support, and then a little bit about the next steps that we're going to do in terms of trying to help this group of young people. So who are young dementia carers? Well, kind of the definition is in the name. They're children and young people who help care for a family member living with dementia. And obviously these young people can be very young, 5, 6 years old, but we also describe them up to the age of 25, where they would be young adult carers. But what they have in common is that they live in families where a family member is living with dementia. So they might be very involved or not very involved in the day-to-day care, but they live with the condition every day. And obviously, because we know that in the world, there's currently around 50 million people with dementia. And we also know that by the year 2050, the number will increase to approximately 150 million. It's not difficult to then guess that there are many young people that are going to be in families affected by dementia, and that are going to have to learn about the illness and experience the illness in very different ways. We also know from evidence that they rarely receive appropriate training and support, and most importantly, that their visibility and identification is dangerously low. In general, young carers are very difficult to identify, mainly because maybe they don't even know they're young carers and their parents don't actually know they're young carers. But in this case, that reaches a higher level, and these kids are seriously invisible in many of the cases. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about a first study I did. This was in 2019, 2020 as part of my fellowship. And in this study, we were looking at young adults up to the age of 25 that lived in families affected by a neurological condition. And that could be multiple sclerosis, dementia, or stroke. And in that study, came about because I was doing another study before that one, working with stroke survivors. And in quite a few of the interviews that I did and in the workshops we organized, some of the stroke survivors were asking me if there was anything for their children, because they felt they were being supported, but their young adolescent kids were very much left to their own devices. So that's where the idea to start looking into this young group started. So in this study, as I said, we're looking at experiences of these young people. And one of the exercises we did with them, we asked them to represent their life using Lego. That was just one of the data collection methods we used. So I'm just going to show you a few representations of how young people with a parent with dementia, I'm going to show you the examples in the case of dementia, how they represented their life. So this is a model that a young woman called Bethan did, and she explained that the two pink columns at the bottom were her and her mum. She cared for her mum with dementia, and she didn't have a dad, so the mum was a single mum. So the two pink columns at the bottom were her and her mum. She described that ladder and that sort of traffic light as services, the NHS, social services, care support, so all types of services, and the ladder being very steep and very difficult to climb. And then everything to the right, she described as a mess that was always balancing. So all those things are work, cleaning the house, doing the shopping, organizing activities, friends, spending time in school. So all those things were always balancing. And as she was building this model, it kept breaking. And she kept giggling because she kept saying, well, this is my life. everything is always in a very dangerous sort of balance mode. So that's Bethan's experience. And then this is a different model created by another of the participants. She was as well a young woman, well, she is a young woman, and she was 19, 20 when she created it. She was at university studying, but she lived home, and her dad had dementia. So this is what she created, and she explained that the ball represents her sanity, well-being sort of thing, the ball to the left of your screen. So there's 3 main support networks I have, and then there is barriers around each of them. So you can see the barriers in the models as well. So the first support network for her was her knowledge, the cog pieces. She really liked reading research papers and finding out information about dementia and understanding what her dad was going through. The second support network that she identified was Facebook, which were the animal pieces. She had joined a Facebook page of people going through the same thing as her, and that made her feel a little bit less alone. And then there is friends and family, the human figures. And for her, she was explaining that they are the last resort because she didn't really want to be telling her friends everything. She wanted a separate life to the dementia life. So these are 2 examples of that study and of 2 of the participants with a parent with dementia. Which is already kind of giving you an indication that they are very much left to their own devices. So more recently now, we started in a project that we're about to finish. We had some money to explore what are the identification pathways for these young dementia carers, and are they working? So how are they being found? And when they're being found, how are they being supported? So that's another of the papers there. You can find all the kind of the details on that publication, but I'll give you a little bit of an overview. So we did an explorative qualitative approach methodology. We had participants that were different from different backgrounds. So there were parents of young dementia carers. We had dementia researchers, professionals in the field of dementia, but also in the field of young carers and young adult carers. So people that had worked with young people for many years and could give us their point of view. And then we had 2 data collection methods. One was semi-structured interviews. We did 17 interviews. And then at the end of those interviews, once I had analyzed them and kind of identified the main themes, I organized an online participatory workshop where everybody could kind of tell me whether I got it right or how the themes were resonating with them, and also then work together to create a number of recommendations of how to move forward in terms of identifying and supporting these young people. So 5 themes were identified, and nothing very surprising, as all these things are things that we would all assume are happening, but they were very difficult to kind of pinpoint. So one of the main themes was there was a need for a whole family approach. Another theme to do with young carers not identifying as young carers. Then a postcode lottery, depending on where you live, you get one thing or another. And then they need for tailored support, and one of that support being peer support. So I'll give you now a few examples for each of the themes of some of the things that participants told us. So in terms of a whole family approach, one of the Admiral nurses that took part in the workshop, she was saying they are a unit, and all the care and support needs to be for the whole family unit because they all need it. That was repeated throughout the interviews and throughout the workshop as vital in order to identify and support these families. Another theme that was very, very mentioned a lot was the fact that family and the young carers themselves do not identify themselves as carers. One of the parents of a young dementia carer was saying they weren't carers because they didn't chop up his food or look after him. I wouldn't have called them young carers, but yes, they were. They were babysitting their dad at age 7, 8, and 9, so I could go to work. So obviously that quote says it all. In many times you don't think about your son or daughter as a carer. But if you then look at the things that they're supporting you with, you can think, yes, actually, there is some care and responsibility. And in terms of the postcode lottery, one of the mums was saying in the interviews, I had been living with my husband's dementia for about 10 years. And somebody said to me, have you got an Admiral nurse? Well, there were no Admiral nurses in my area, none at all. It shouldn't be like that. And that was something I've worked in health research for a number of years now. And postcode lottery comes up in everything all the time. But in this case, it's really, really exaggerated. There are pockets of postcodes within the UK where you would be able to find an Admiral nurse, but you could drive just a little bit out and then there will be very, very little there for you. And that was something that obviously was they felt very strongly about. And in terms of tailored support, it has to be support that has to be fit for purpose. And obviously many of these young people get or could get support from Young Carers charities. But in terms of that Young Carers charities and the support they offer, one of the mums of a young dementia carer said, I've never found that right place for them. What they were offered were things like trips out, and although of course they love all of that sort of thing, my girls didn't particularly need that. They needed someone to talk to. So support that is fit for their needs, and most importantly, and it was mentioned a lot, support that comes at the right time and that it can be there when is needed. Because you can't really plan when things are going to get more difficult. You can't really plan for a crisis. So support that you can just pick up the phone and say, now is when I need it. And then very related to this is the fact that peer support, there is plenty of evidence in many different areas that peer support is a very strong tool to support people. But in this case, we had there was a lot of discussion and there was agreement that, of course, yes, it is something that is needed. So one of the mums was saying, our children felt unusual, isolated, and alone. So being with other people who are in a similar situation is really, really powerful. And this is quite important, as in they are unusual because they are there's often not many people like them around. So in their school, maybe there is only a few, or they might be the only one. So if young carers very often feel like that, I think young dementia carers even more. And the isolation and the feeling of loneliness is quite accentuated. One young adult carer that took part in the study, he was in his 20s, well, he's in his 20s, but he helped care for her mom with dementia since he was around 15. So he was saying, in that group, there's a universal understanding. So you don't have to do the explaining part. Because obviously it's very, it is not easy for young people to explain what's happening to their parent. And this is even more difficult in this situation because there's so many assumptions about dementia, that dementia is only for the older people. Oh, how can your dad or your mom have dementia? No way. So that explaining part needs to be removed from the equation, and that's what peer support offers. So as part of the as part of the study, we then came up with a number of recommendations building from these themes. But we thought it would be a good idea to create something that was a little bit less academic, that was something that we could share online, that had nice, simple language to share in terms of what recommendations and what is it that young dementia carers need. So I'm going to show you a little animation, and the link, it's on YouTube. It's free for, it's available for anybody to access.
What do young dementia carers need?
We need help and support.
First, we need society to understand. Being a young carer can mean many different things. Dementia in the family can impact all aspects of a young person's life.
Second,
we need clear identification pathways. We need young people's services, adult services, and schools to speak to each other. We need support for the whole family. This is because dementia affects all members of a family.
Fourth,
We need awareness campaigns that resonate with us and that are designed by us.
fifth,
And we need tailored support that is fit for purpose. We need access to peer support. This will give us a chance to talk and feel less alone. We need support that is available as and when we need it. We need support from specialist dementia nurses that know what we are going through. In the UK, they are called Admiral nurses. And we need support that is both online and face-to-face. What do young dementia carers need?
we need help and support.
Well, that was a little bit of a different way of showing the feedback that participants had to give us, and hopefully is a little bit of a tool to start the conversation when we're thinking about this young group of people. So alongside that work, I've been working in a UK-wide randomized controlled trial looking at a tool developed by the World Health Organization that is called iSupport for dementia. It is an online training program for dementia carers, and it focuses on providing skills about caring, but also tools on how to make sure that carers protect their well-being and think about themselves as well in their own health. But as you can see from the cover, it's not really designed for younger people. I don't think many young people would look at that cover and think, wow, this is appealing. I'm going to have a look. So we thought it would be a good idea to work with young people to adapt it to the needs of for it to be accessible to young people and attractive to young people. All the details of how we did the adaptation are on that paper, but I'll explain a little bit what sort of steps we took. So we found 6 young people, wonderful young people actually, that helped us look through it. They all had experience of caring for a family member with dementia. 4 of them had experience of caring for a dad with dementia, and 2 of them for a grandmother. And then we also had professionals, again, as in the other study, professionals that had experience of working with young people and in the field of dementia. We also needed their input throughout. So what did we do to adapt it? We had 2 stages. In stage 1, which we called consultation and feedback, basically we offer young people and the professionals as many options as possible for them to be able to give us their opinion. So one of the things we did is we printed the whole iSupport for dementia as in a big booklet. It's quite a thick book, and we posted it to them, and they could annotate and write on it as much as they wanted, if that's what they felt they preferred to do. Another option was to have one-to-one online meetings with myself, and that's one of the things that many of them prefer to do. So they would read through a chapter, and then we would have a Zoom meeting, and they'd tell me what they thought about the chapter and what changes they would propose. But one of the more specific ways they could provide feedback was using this tailored workbook that each of them had posted to their homes. So it was a little booklet, and inside that workbook, every section of iSupport was listed. And then for each of the sections, they could tell me whether they wanted to take it out. So if they didn't like it, they just tick that box. If they thought it should be kept in exactly as it was, they would tick the next column. And if they thought they wanted to keep it in, but they would suggest changes, they could then choose whether they would suggest changes to the language, the content, or the images. So the first 3 columns are very much a tick box, and we knew that we're talking about young adolescents. We weren't expecting them to get into much detail. They have plenty going on. So tick box seems like a good idea, but they had the last option the last column as an option as well to provide further feedback if they wanted to and write their ideas. And we were quite pleased because, as you can see, this is some examples of the workbooks we got back. They did take the time and they did tell us what they thought of the different sections and how they would change bits and pieces. So we had quite a rich set of data with all their opinions to then go ahead and create the pilot version. So we had that pilot version, and then they received this one as well on the post, and they had the chance to look through that pilot version as well. And the same with the professionals. And then we did 3 different co-design workshops online. We did one where it was myself and the young people. I did another one just with the professionals. And the professionals ones were very important from the point of view of safeguarding and safeguarding young children, because what we didn't want is to create a tool that sort of accepted or kind of gave justification to young people having a lot of caring responsibilities. So they provided us with the feedback in terms of how to make sure that we the adapted version had plenty of messages there to say, make sure that you don't do more than you should be doing. You're a young person, ask for help or ask a responsible adult. So they didn't feel that having a lot of care responsibilities was the expectation. So then we did a final 3rd co-design workshop where everybody attended, the professionals, the young people and myself. And there was a little bit just to refine some of the sections and give a chance for everybody to have a final discussion. And I then had a number of one-to-one discussions with some of the young people who still wanted to change some things. So that was the final sort of little bit of refinement. So from all of that, then we created iSupport for young people. One of the things that changed from the pilot to the final version was the name. Initially it was iSupport for Young Carers, and then we got in the co-design workshops, and it's resonating with the other things we've been talking from the other study. The word young carer might put some people off, or might not put off, but they might look at it and think, oh, I'm not a young carer, so this is not for me. So it was agreed that it was best to call it iSupport for young people. So the final version is quite similar in content to the adult version. It has 5 modules, and they go from explaining a little bit about dementia to more a big focus on the young people themselves in module 3, a whole module looking at caring for themselves. There's module 5 that is quite heavy on behavior changes. So it looks through the different symptoms and different case scenarios of how to deal with them. So there are caring tips and advice on getting help and support. So in the online version, young people can click through it and they'll find, for example, in this case, tips for helping somebody with their daily dressing, oral care or bathing. So there's different case scenarios discussing that type of personal care. There's also examples of real life scenarios. And obviously the young people were instrumental at this. So during the co-design meetings we had and during the one-to-one meetings I had with them, they were telling me their own personal experiences. So we made some of them into little scenarios. So things, the whole of the tool is designed in a way that you have a topic and then some examples and some questions about them. So there's multiple choice exercises, so there's a little bit of interaction in it. Again, there is an example that normally, well, most of the time, will have a character as a main character that is a young person that is helping care, or for a parent with dementia, for a grandparent. It sets the example of the situation, and then there's a number of scenarios where the young people can choose what they would do in different situations, and they just tick the box, and then there's some feedback about the possible answers they should have given or could have given. There's no right or wrong, really. There are some activities to help the young people reflect on their own situation. So you will go through different scenarios, and then there will be an activity to say, okay, now time to think about your own situation. And for example, in module 3, that it's about caring for themselves. There's a section where young people get to identify the things that they would like to do, the things that give them pleasure, and not feeling guilty about wanting to do some of those things. So they go through different steps, they choose the activities they like doing, and then following from this, there are other activities where they have to think, okay, how can I go about doing these activities? Who can I ask for help? What things need to be put in place for me to be able to do that?
This is what 2 young people who helped us create iSupport for Young People had to say.
I'm really happy with the way that it's turned out, because I hope that it can be used as a support system for young carers, and to help inform them for what could happen, help them learn about how to deal with certain things, and to possibly prepare them for what could happen, because without any sort of help, any sort of preparation, it can be really shocking and take someone by surprise. But if they are more prepared for the future, what could happen and how to deal with it, hopefully not only will they be able to handle it better, but they will also be able to possibly mentally prepare themselves a bit more for what could happen to the person that they're caring for, or just in general the future of being a young carer.
For somebody to have a book written by people going through the same thing as them, which will be read by people going through the same thing as them, helps them to think they're not alone, and I think that's really helpful. Also, ways to cope and how to ask for help is really, really important in the book. It can help you obviously cope. All the activities are aimed to help you. So I think it's really, really an interesting and amazing book that is done really, really well, and I would definitely recommend it.
This could help someone that's also a young carer to make them realise that that they're not alone and they can do it, and although it is difficult, hopefully this could make it easier for them.
So I guess the next steps with iSupport for Young People, the objectives of it are the first one, and many of the young people mentioned that, is to normalize the role of young carers. So it's not something strange. So people can say, okay, well, I do help care for my dad or for my granddad, and it's a nice thing to do, and there's nothing that I should feel ashamed of. The next thing that it needs to make sure it covers is the safeguarding. So at the bottom there, you can see a little square that says remember. So there's little messages like that throughout iSupport for Young People, just so that young people keep being remembered that they shouldn't have to deal with some things on their own, and that it is okay to ask for help, and that they should ask for help from an adult. So those type of messages are throughout, reinforcing that that message of ask for help and don't assume that you have to take on so much. And then again, very linked to that, the vital role of support and of asking for help, and how it's about being able to ask for help, but that is very difficult for young people. I mean, it's difficult for adults to ask for help, imagine for young people. So what we want is to be a tool to support the mental health and the knowledge of these young people. But also we want it to be used by organizations and charities that are currently helping this type of in this type of context, so with young carers or with families affected by dementia, because at the moment they don't really have anything to offer to the young people. So this could be a first step. It's obviously the first version, and we haven't really been able to implement it or get many young people to use it. So we're very open to to the fact that it will need to be adapted or it will need to be used in many different ways. So we are trying to find the funding to be able to explore how it can be used in the best way, and in a very flexible way. So one of the things we're doing, we're translating it into different languages, but we're also making it free. It's free and available online, and the link will be on the chat. The website of that link that will be on the chat should go live and work properly from the 1st of June. But don't quote me on that one, because when it comes to IT and getting the website ready, I really have gone through hell. So I am hoping that the 1st of June is the day when you can go onto that link, you can download the PDFs of each of the modules, or you can go online and access it online. Because it's all about increasing the visibility of these young people and about disseminating iSupport for young people or similar things, or bits of iSupport for young people. There might be that somebody that works in a young carers organization has one young person that is in that situation, and they just print out one of the activities to do with them, or they sit down with them and read a section of module 2. So it's a very, very flexible approach, and obviously free. So we're working at the moment with teams in Spain and in Italy and Brazil to translate it into different languages. It's been translated to Spanish already and to Portuguese, and we've done some patient involvement events where we've asked for feedback on the translated version, because obviously translated something is not enough to make it work in different contexts. It needs to be obviously tailored to the culture and to the place where it's going to be used. But the translation is a first step. So we've got some money and some funding to work with those teams across Europe and in Brazil. And there's obviously very different contexts depending on the country. In Brazil, for example, the term young carers, it's very, very, very delicate, and they don't really want to use it because it's associated with child labor. So it's all those contextual differences that we are trying to explore. But in the UK, what we want is to do anything we can to make these young people stand out in a good way, and help those that want to help them, because I think at the moment they're a little bit limited in what they can offer. So I think that was all from me. Sorry the video didn't work, but yes, the links are there. You can go watch them, and they're in YouTube. And here's my email address. And the illustrations were done by my good friend Sokya, that is an amazing artist. So she's done the illustrations and the videos. I want to give her some credit, or all the credit really. Anything, get in touch with me, and I'm very happy to share. I support the actual tool, the PDFs, anything